Hello and welcome to this week's instalment of Brisbane Health. When you dine out these days, you may see more and more gluten-free options available. Today we will look at celiac disease, the symptoms, diagnosis, and how people can change their diet to deal with the disease. Today I'm joined by Daniele, a celiac sufferer. Daniele, thanks so much for coming in.
Welcome.
Now first off, celiac disease, what is it?
Celiac disease is an autoimmune disease. When you eat gluten, which is wheat, barley and rye, your body has a allergic reaction to it. And what it's actually doing is doing damage inside your gut. So inside your gut you have little things called villi, which in a healthy person are quite long little fingerlings that help you to absorb the nutrients when you eat food. Unfortunately, when you have celiac disease, they are eaten away, and so it stops you from being able to absorb nutrients in food. And also celiacs have reactions when they eat the gluten. So some of them are quite violent in terms of feeling quite unwell, vomiting, etc. Unfortunately, though, there are others who don't have any reaction at all, but there's still the damage being done on the inside.
Right, and how did you find out that you had celiac disease? Did you have symptoms?
I had progressively worse heartburn, so indigestion and heartburn, which I just put it down to everybody has heartburn, everybody has indigestion. I got to a point where I couldn't eat things like tomatoes or drink wine because it would just give me severe heartburn. But I just took antacids and lived on those and thought that was quite normal, to be honest. So, but it got just to a progressively more severe level, which then finally forced me to go and see a doctor about it.
And do you know a lot of people with celiac disease?
I've only been diagnosed for 18 months, so in that time I must admit I've found more and more people that I know now do know a celiac. So progressively, I think once you're diagnosed, you find out more. But actually, in our family, there were no other celiacs at the time that I was diagnosed. So it was quite a surprise, to be honest.
So you're mentioning your family. Is celiac disease hereditary?
It is, yeah. So it is genetic. So the celiac gene is passed on either by your mother or your father. So you're born with the gene, but then at some point, so some are born with the gene and born with active celiac disease from a child. Others, for some reason, there's something that triggers it throughout your life. So they're not quite sure why, but so people are being diagnosed at various different ages. So once upon a time, it was thought that you were born with it. You had it from a child, but there are people as old as 60, 70 who are being diagnosed for the first time with celiac disease at that age.
Right, and can you tell me, do you have any children or anything can they be tested?
Yeah, so I have two children, 8 and 10, Joshua and Georgia, and they've both been tested, and they both do carry the celiac gene, but they don't have celiac disease currently. So we just go through a process of getting them tested, a blood test every year, just to make sure that it hasn't kicked in for them.
And is it worth it for you to maybe keep the strict celiac disease diet for your whole family, or is it when they get a bit older?
I'm on a 100%, obviously, as a celiac sufferer, I have to be 100% gluten-free, so extremely strict, whereas at the moment, my kids don't need that. My son has, from a young age, a lot of food intolerances, so not just to wheat, but, to dairy and preservatives and colours and things like that, so we keep his diet, quite low on wheat and other artificial things just to make sure that it works for him, because he just has a low tolerance to a lot of different foods.
Do you find a lot of people don't know what celiac disease is when you say that you've got I can't eat that?
Yeah, look, I think with the fad around gluten-free diets, I think there's a lot of misconceptions around gluten-free, and that's disappointing, I think, for celiacs, because it is an allergic reaction. So you need to be, really aware that it is a severe reaction in those that actually have celiac disease. It's not just a fad diet that we choose to be on. So I think that's the important thing, is the education and awareness that it is actually a medical condition, that it is an allergy. It has as severe implications in the long term, to other allergies like peanut allergy and things like that. So you need to, take it seriously.
And do you think that celiac disease is quite a new thing? I mean, we've been eating wheat and barley and that for years.
Well, certainly it's race specific, so there are certain races that are born with the gene. There are certain races that don't have that gene ever, so it is quite interesting. But I think we're probably all, we've always had the gene, whether we're just more aware of it these days. As more and more people get diagnosed, the awareness increases and the diagnosis increases.
And can you tell me about any symptoms that might be a little bit different that people don't think would be connected to celiac disease?
Yeah, look, I think, as I said, the symptoms are quite wide-ranging. Some people get headaches. Others get a dermatitis. So I heard of a lady most recently who was diagnosed. So she just had a patch of dermatitis on her arm that someone noticed and said, "Oh, look, that looks quite nasty. You should, go and get that seen to." And she did, and she went to a dermatologist who sent her on to a gastroenterologist, and they found out that she was quite far advanced celiac disease, had to have a serious operation, and at the same time they found out her 11-year-old son was an active celiac as well. So, she felt quite bad at the end in terms of thinking, well, he said, every time he ate, he used to end up lying on the lounge, after every meal. So she felt, but at least, I think it's a good thing once you actually at least get diagnosed and you can get others tested in your family. And certainly that's what I've done as well. So I'm one of 7. So I have 6 siblings who I've all encouraged to go ahead and get tested for the disease as well.
And so you're a celiac sufferer, and when you go out to restaurants and things like that and you look at items and you think, well, I should be fine eating that, or if you've even asked maybe and said, would I be fine eating that, how long after eating that would you find that you get the reaction?
If I go, and accidentally, have gluten within half an hour, I get a reaction. So I still do get the heartburn reaction, the burning at the back of the throat, which I think is a good thing, because at least it allows me to, know where I can and can't go in terms of, particularly when you're eating out at restaurants. So you can work through the ones where they do, treat it seriously, and their gluten-free food is truly gluten-free, as opposed to others that I think don't treat it as seriously, because contamination is a big risk. So it's as little as a breadcrumb that you react to. So that makes it quite tricky in terms of food preparation. You really have to strictly have no wheat, barley or rye anywhere near the food that you're preparing for it to be strictly gluten-free. And it finds its way into things like sauces and lollies and things like that you wouldn't even think, how's there wheat in that?
After the break, we'll look at the steps involved in diagnosis.